Aloha! Welcome to the Live Ukulele Podcast. My name is Brad Bordessa. Thank you for tuning in. On this episode, I'm talking with Sammy, aka 4stringboy. He's a wonderful player, virtuoso player, and educator based out of Copenhagen, Denmark these days. And one of the most genuinely nice guys I've talked to in a long time. Somebody who I've seen around here and there on social medias, thought, that guy's a good ukulele player doing something kind of different and off the wall. And just the other day, he came through my feed, and I think maybe I shared something that he posted, and then he commented on it, and I was like, I should reach out. Let's make this happen. Let's figure out who this guy is and talk story with him. And we did. And it was lovely, totally delightful conversation, and I'm excited to share it with you folks. Before we do that, though, I want to share real quick about my Zoom workshop last month. We talked about understanding the fretboard, and it was a delightful time. I had a great time sharing with folks about how to understand the chromatic scale, how to find notes on the fretboard, how to build major scales, those kinds of things. It was lovely to see all the faces there and to have a little bit of kind of some interaction and Q&A, and we, people shared a little bit about their experience and how their reflections on the material, and it was just really great. I had a lovely time, and I hope everybody who attended did as well. But this Zoom workshop thing is something that I want to try and do in 2024, try and do it every month. And so I've chosen, I guess it's the fourth Saturday, I'm going to try and do one of these workshops whenever I'm available. I'm doing a little bit of traveling in the summer, but hopefully most fourth Saturdays this year, I'm going to try and do these Zoom workshops, and it'll be about some unique one-off topic every time, so you don't need to have come to previous ones to understand what we're talking about. It'll be all kind of self-contained. And this month, April 27th, I'm going to be talking about ukulele chord shapes, the subject of my book. You don't need the book to participate in the workshop. What I want to do with the workshop is to share kind of more practical applications of how you use the chord shapes and move them around, and to observe how they interact with each other. Kind of like, what is the point of chord shapes? I'd like to kind of answer that question. And so we'll play a song, just a 1-4-5 song, using the same chord shape for the whole entire song, so you can kind of see everything linear and how it goes together. And we'll also look at some different shape combinations that allow you to play in certain places on the fretboard, and we'll talk about why you might want to do this at all. If you're interested in registering, it's $20, and I'll put a link in the podcast description. Otherwise, you can go to liveukulele.com/store and register over there. Once again, it's going to be on April 27th, and it's going to be at 10 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time. So look up your time zone converter, figure out when that is for you. That should be a window that works for most folks. If you're tuning in from India or Pakistan or somewhere way on the other side of the world, it might be a little bit of a push for the time change. But otherwise, I tried to catch Australia, Japan early. Mainland United States is easy, no problem. That's the middle of the day. And then the UK, it'll be in their afternoon, evening. So I hope you can join. It's going to be an hour of instruction and then half an hour of Q&A / me playing songs to fill the time, whatever folks want to talk about. So with that said, let's get to my conversation with 4stringboy. We talked a couple of weeks ago. We navigated the time change, made it work. He was at the end of his workday. I was just waking up, but it was a lovely time, and I hope you enjoy. This is Sammy.
Thanks for inviting me. It's really, really sweet of you.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to kind of get to know you and see what you're about, because I've been watching your stuff and seeing you around for a lot of years, and you seem like kind of off the wall. Like you're a very different breed of ukulele player, and I love that, because it gets boring over time when people do the same thing and they're just playing like you know, typical ukulele covers of songs. It's like, yeah, it's been done.
Yeah. I mean, I've always tried not to spend so much time like which is a terrible thing to say as a ukulele teacher, but is not learning so much from other ukulele players and like not, so basically kind of attacking the ukulele how I think I should attack it. And that's not, when I first started off and stuff, I had, I did the ukulele underground lessons. So Aldrin Guerrero is basically a Papa ukulele to me. And so those lessons really got me off and started and stuff like that. And then it was kind of from there, it was very much, I think this sounds okay. And as I've been a bass player and a guitarist for like a lot of years, ukulele was like the most recent instrument. So I was kind of overconfident, going into it and being like, yeah, I'm sure if it sounds okay, it's going to be fine. So, and I've tried to keep that ignorance going on.
Sweet. Well, I think that's a good thing. I think that's healthy for ukulele players. That's kind of how I came up. I mean, I learned from who I learned from, and then I never looked at it again besides, the real basic stuff, and always idolized the guitar players and things like that. Because there's so much more there. They've done so much more already.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Exactly. And it's, like you said, it's kind of, you don't want to be restricted to like a box either. You know what I mean? We all talk about, learning instruments and stuff like that. And it's, there's so many cool things going on from other instruments that we can borrow from that. Screw it. Let's just throw some of it in there and maybe it'll work.
Sweet. So you had already been playing bass and guitar. What is kind of your background? You're from the UK, I believe, but you're in Denmark. How did you get to here? Can you give us the short version?
Very, very short version is that I started playing guitar when I was 13. 6 months later, picked up a bass because my mates were in a band and needed a bass player. Standard, every bass player origin story, right? But ended up basically bass becoming my main instrument. Went to college, studied music, went to university, did a music degree. Always wanted to be a music teacher because I was inspired by my college tutors. They were incredible musicians. So basically went that route. As I was doing that, I became a music lecturer. And whilst I was doing that, I basically bought myself a piano and a drum kit and stuff and basically taught myself how to play those alongside. And then a few more years down the line, 2015, I met a ukulele for the first time in real life. And I'd never met one before, knew it by name, but I'd literally never touched one. And because I was a bass player, I was like, well, it's got 4 strings. So I was like, it's a friend of mine. So I bought it there. Actually, that's a lot. I bought 5 ukuleles. That was my first ukulele purchase. I bought 5 ukuleles, took them home,
okay.
as you do. And and it started from there.
Wow. So why 5? That's a very large number compared to most people. Most people start with 1 and then the 5 quickly dwindles.
That's exactly it. I thought the more strings the better, that's so quickly adding up. No, it was because I was a music teacher, I thought that basically, and again, I went into this with some overconfidence and arrogance. I was like, from my limited knowledge of ukulele, it's a pretty easy instrument. So I was like, so that's perfect. So I was like, if I can get up the basics and stuff like that, then it can be another instrument that I offer to teach. And that went really well for me until I had a private student very early on who came up to me and basically was like, oh, I want to play like a Jake Shimabukuro. And I was like, Jake Shimabukuro who? I was like, I don't. And so, that completely caught me off guard. And so after that, I did some Googling and then I did a lot of crying. And then it came back to it. And then I was like, oh my God. And that kind of like opened up the aspect of the ukulele to me. And then I was like, I can't mess around with this. There's some real depth here. And that's when I looked into the whole ukulele underground online lessons and started with the fingerstyle stuff. Because I mean, even though I do play guitar, I'm very much an electric guitarist. Pick, never played fingerstyle. Never had any time for acoustics, stuff like that. So the whole fingerstyle stuff was completely new to me, and literally learning it through those lessons really showed me the basics of where to go, and I kind of carried it on from there. And that student wanted, it was an easy request. Somebody had been playing ukulele for like a couple of weeks. He wanted a cover of Shaka Khan's Ain't Nobody in the style of Jake Shimabukuro. And obviously, me being the polite idiot I was like, yeah, sure, of course. No problem. That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely it. So I made a terrible rendition of it, which he hated, and that cover has stuck with me over the years, and I've basically kind of upgraded it every single year. So it's still something that I now put into it, like that's kind of upgraded as I've gone on. But it's there as humble remindings for me to basically, from where the little instrument began.
Wow. So coming from the guitar background and then jumping into the ukulele, like in a serious manner, how many things did you bring with you, and how many things did you like consciously set aside? Because a lot of people, they either come at it and they play it just like a little guitar, or they start completely fresh and, I'm never playing guitar again. Like I'm just gonna figure out this little thing.
Yeah. I mean, again, because of so I was very much into more heavy metal, progressive metal and tech and stuff like that. So all the stuff that I was playing guitar was quite technical. And so instantly that didn't work on ukulele, at all, because you try and play it and oh my God, no, it just sounds awful. And try and play that. So I gave up on that playing style instantly, because I was it just doesn't sound. And you see the odd YouTube video from time to time where they're metal on a ukulele, and it's just this person with a 40, a proper guitarist with a $40 ukulele mahalo or something, shredding it up and something, and it sounds terrible. So I quickly gave up with that, because I was this is not how you get the good sound out of the instrument. And I think it was from going through the fingerstyle stuff and then learning about campanella, especially. That was a term I was completely had no idea about and stuff like that. And I played piano and was very much into composing and writing on piano and stuff. And it was I kind of took the framework from thinking about how things sounded on the piano more and bring it to the ukulele. So weirdly, the guitar helped me out nothing apart from I knew a D chord as a G. That was about the only help it had. So I was very happy with that.
Cool. Well, you have a big old, is that a full-size piano sitting in front of you?
Oh, yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, so I was listening to your new album, and
oh, bless your soul.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I was surprised at how much piano there was. You have really got a lot of strong piano composition behind the ukulele to go with it. And that's not something you really hear. So I was going to ask, do you play? But it's very obvious.
It's just something I like to have around, basically. That's any room I walk into, I just like to sit here and feel really good about myself.
It looks good.
It does. Again, I'm not a classically trained pianist. I've never had lessons or anything like that. It's all kind of been self-taught, but very much in my later life, that's when YouTube existed. And that's basically very much, as a teenager, it was very much none of this existed. And good God, if it did, then I would have had a much easier time. But when introducing the piano into my life, it was very much that. Throughout college and stuff, you had to basically play at least a little bit alongside your main instrument. So it was always basically there in my life, but I'd never really spent much time to it. So, and then the more and more I got into composition, piano, and especially using it as a MIDI controller, right, and writing on a DAW or something like that, really came into it way more. And I mean, for the album, I try and use the piano to kind of complement the uke. Because it's very, very, very easy. You know what I mean? A piano is, shit ton more octaves than the ukulele, right? So we can easily just erase the space where the ukulele lives, but I want to leave the ukulele kind of where it is and almost treat the piano almost as what a bass would do, and kind of take it. So with the piano is usually I treat it as a quite high or quite low, and kind of live a middle range for the ukulele to sit in. Because like I said, it's I always wanted it to be a ukulele led album, and I wanted to add in other instruments without completely undermining or erasing the ukulele. So I wanted everything to kind of complement it, but only as in ways that the ukulele sonically couldn't do. So that's what I tried to do with it.
So were you composing on ukulele first and then adding the piano part, or was it happening at the same time?
So there was I'd say 50% of it was composed on the ukulele to start with, way before I'd even considered adding any other instrumentation. And I was very lucky. I got I basically my first live gig with the ukulele, and I'm used to being a band, so I've always played as a bass player in bands. So I'm very happy, basically tucked in with a band, but never played as a solo player on my own. So my first gig as a solo player was a UK mini tour. Which is the best but also stupidest way of doing things, because it's the greatest, because it's like, how do you get over the fear of something? Do it 5 times continuously, over and over and over again. But it's basically, there's a lovely charity called the Ukulele Project in the UK, and they acquired some funding and basically asked me as an artist, there's like, will you come over and visit all the different places that we're based in the UK and do a tour? So obviously, part of me dropped, because I was like, I know I've played live before, I'm going to die. But the other part of me was like, well, this is the perfect way to kind of kick out live performances, is to go into that. And so I'd already started writing for the album when I did that tour. And that was very good for me. I mean, there's some videos from that tour, and if you listen, the compositions are still there, but they're played nervously and much too quickly. So they sound very bad, but it kind of gave me a good reflection when I came back to them to kind of slow tempos down a bit, and also basically add some backing to it. It was one track that I decided to kind of combine and add the backing to, because it's always been something in my life that, again, like, I just like making music. So I wanted to see if I could add some more layers to this ukulele in order to make it sound. And for me, it really worked. So the 50% of the tracks that I had, I started working at a couple of them, and then there's a track at the very start of the album called Sunrise, and that was basically the first track that I wrote that wasn't just written on the ukulele, that was written hand in hand with the backing. So they were like written to complement each other. And I'm not sure which was more difficult, whether it's harder to like write with a 2, or whether you have like, I had all the ukulele done so then I could place everything around it, but again, without like stomping on the ukulele. That was never, I wanted to always keep it as like the center stage without trying to steal away from it, basically.
Nice. Yeah, it's fascinating how other people approach songwriting, and especially when you have the multi-instruments.
Yeah.
Because the piano is like, it's a composition piece, right? It's like, it's all there. It's very easy to do all the things.
It's so good. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. It's it really is. I think anything. That's the one thing that I've always loved about the piano. I think it doesn't matter what the piece of music is. If you get a good pianist who can play the entire piece on the piano, it always stops people. You know what I mean? It's always that instrument. It's like, oh my God, that's perfect. So anything that can sound even remotely good on a piano, basically, then is a good starting point.
And so with that tour, how long ago was that? Is that a new thing?
That's a very good question. 2 years ago, October, not last year, the year before, maybe. My brain is terrible. Yeah, it was definitely in October. So
okay,
maybe 2022.
All right. So you're like, obviously a very skilled, like, virtuoso ukulele player, but you haven't dabbled in the solo, like, the performing career side of things so much. Have you been spending your time just practicing, or have you been teaching along the way getting to this point?
So, I mean, very, very much up until the pandemic. My full-time job is a teacher, private teacher. So that's basically what I've always been doing. So I've always been teaching, and I've always written exercises and covers for my students. So it's never been to like, for me to perform them ever. It's just they've had suggestions and been like, oh, I'd love to play this song. And obviously you go to look at their song and it's not on ukulele. And you could strum and often, but most of my students just aren't singers. And I'm legally been asked never to sing again. Otherwise, I'll get deported back to the UK. So I'm not allowed to do that. So I'm in the same thing. So it was basically, I enjoyed the puzzle aspect of like kind of stitching it. And again, it was very much like, because my theory knowledge on a piano is fine. So it means that basically then it was kind of stitching it together using the same techniques on the ukulele to kind of create the chord melody. So it was always basically done for the students. And then that very much did it until at some point, again, this was probably just before pandemic, I decided to start Instagram. And just because I wanted to do something with it and put it all out there and stuff, but I was terrified of doing it. And just because it's a very weird one, because my teaching hat, I'll say this from basically my teaching hat, because I used to teach lots of kids and everything like that, even though there's lots of adults in there, was kind of, more professional and stuff like that. Whereas in real life, I'm an absolute idiot. So I wanted to kind of incorporate a bit of that into not using that in social media kind of felt like really weird, and I had to force myself to do it and felt very strange. So kind of finding my voice and being like, oh no, actually, if I'm just my usual idiot self online and talk about crisps aside with the ukulele and, stupid stuff like that, that's okay. That's totally allowed. And then I started enjoying it more, because it was just it didn't feel like work. It felt like something I was enjoying. So I started basically putting these covers and recording them for YouTube and then putting them on Instagram and stuff like that. And it was people were really kind. There's a great community on Instagram, ukulele wise. So it's, it was very easy to get sucked into that and come on board with it, because it's so rewarding.
Well, to be fair, your content is very high quality. It's always, I mean, even before I was really paying attention, I would run across your stuff and be like, oh wow, who's this guy? Because the playing was on point, the video looked nice, it was just a nice presentation, and you seemed kind of an interesting dude who's that's different. I'm hooked. I'm intrigued. So congrats on keeping that up. And because I've just recently, I've been off of social media for a long time, and just recently put the Facebook thing back up and realized it's good for business. And I just struggle with it so much.
No, I know. It's, anybody that does this kind of thing for a living, right? It is hard work, man, because it's as much as it can drag, and it's very easy to get burnt out, because essentially, what do you do for a living? Can I ask? Is this what you do for a living?
Yeah, I do the ukulele teaching stuff, liveukulele.com, and
man, so there you go. So you're basically you're a one person business, right?
Yeah.
That is the hardest shit, because you are everything. That's exactly it. So you have to put all your energy into all these different hats, and that really wears you out. And so projecting also that thing and coming up with new ideas for Facebook and or whatever social medias and keeping it fresh is hard work, man. So so that's why. Don't worry, it's totally fine that you take a break from it, and also the algorithm and everything could be punishing and stuff. It's I try not to count numbers anymore, but I was always I'll get to 10,000 on Instagram. I'll get to 10,000 on Instagram. And then I think I don't know how many years it's been that it's been floating around that. And it's I can't care anymore. You know what I mean? Because I think if you do care too much, no, it's there. I'm there for the community aspect of it, and obviously it's part of my job, and I need to promote and sell and stuff and pay rent and all that stuff. But it very much is, you just have to put out what you enjoy and not think too hard about it. I think that's essentially it. Because if you're enjoying yourself and have a great time, people are going to have a great time too, right? And they genuinely can see that. So it's I try not to think too hard about it.
So can I ask you, what brought you to Denmark?
So me and my wife have always talked about living in some sexy mainland European, capital city or something like that. It was always a nice pipe dream. And then in the UK, there's a big thing that came up called Brexit.
Oh, that thing.
yeah, that thing. And that basically, that was somehow basically it was going to happen. And I remember the date was announced, and it basically said, right, in a year, Brexit has just been voted and it's going to happen. So basically, in a year, that's all that's going to come into effect. They leave the EU. And what that meant was that basically everybody in the UK lost their freedom of movement. So before that, we could move to anywhere in Europe and settle down and it'd be totally cool. You don't need any crazy visas or anything like that. Brexit cuts that out because, you want to be stuck on an island. So it was basically, that was kind of like a time bomb, as if to say, oh my God, okay, so we did that. So we were, I'm going to say we a lot because basically I'm the face of the teaching, but my wife is the one who does everything that's basically successful and important. Okay, so that's essentially it. I am the literal teacher, but in the business sense, she is literally everything else to do with me. So anytime you think anything looks good of mine, or you think it looks cool, it's her. Okay, it is. I'm just sat here like a potato, basically going, so we basically worked our ass off, saving up loads of money, and then managed to somehow put it together. And we moved to Copenhagen. Don't know anybody, but just as two self-employed people moved and was just like basically saved up, living off savings and hoping to make the teaching side and everything work over here.
Wow. Good for you guys. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Just
Thank
a fresh
you.
start like that.
Yeah, exactly. Which was terrifying. I mean, the one great thing about Denmark is that it's like they're so good at English, and it literally is like 50% Danish, 50% English. So no matter who you talk to, most people will be able to talk to you perfectly back. Or it means that signs and announcements and all the terrible stuff is usually in English also. So it's not, you know what I mean? It's not like if we move to Spain or France, it'd be a much harder time, but in Scandinavia they're kind of already accommodated for that. So it was we were lucky in that fact.
Wow, that's a big life change, and that's just cool that you can just make it happen. A lot of people either don't have the guts or the means, and and that's why we won't go all political, but that's why the Brexit thing's very upsetting, because that's taken that away from so many people, so many young people who had not even the chance to experience it. So it is very upsetting, and it was the best thing we've ever done. It was extremely stressful, and still over these years there are things that crop up that are like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? But we're super happy here, and it's treated us really well. So as far as being in Denmark, I know Tobias, is there any kind of ukulele scene? Have you been able to tap into any music stuff? I know he said that the support for artists is very strong.
Yeah. So from my limited knowledge, so Denmark's very big on jazz, basically. That's essentially jazz is their kind of shit. And the wonderful thing is I'm a big fan of Tobias, and Tobias, we live in the same city, technically. He's here somewhere. That's exactly it. He's definitely here. I've gone around shouting his name, but it hasn't worked. So, the jazz, I've done a few gigs in the city, but it's very much that because most of my life is online, it's easier to basically sit here and stream or basically stuff like that. You know what I mean? Gigging can be a lot of work and often like that. When we first moved here, I did try and kick off some ukulele groups and something like that, but there was very, very little reception. I think here it's still not treated as a serious instrument. And because every gig I've done, people have been like, I had no idea a ukulele could sound like that, or that was even a ukulele. And so I think they're very much stuck in the the kind of old school British sounding ukuleles. Basically, that's it. So George Formby-esque kind of things. So that's it. It's just there's not enough people. I mean, Tobias has been spreading the message and needs to spread it more, and I'll spread it my end, but we'll try and spread it basically over that, and hopefully between us we can get it going. But no, it's I've had some students and some like patrons and stuff like that come from Copenhagen and stuff, which is really nice. And I teach all around the city and stuff, but it's definitely not treated like a serious instrument like the UK or the US treats it, or definitely not Hawaii, you know what I mean? So it's I think it's got some catching up to do, but my dream big dream would be the person to help Scandinavia realize that. It would be the person to show off the ukulele and go, look, this is absolutely a serious instrument that can make beautiful, wonderful music. So please take it seriously and make it available. You know what I mean?
Cool. So do you have any gigs lined up where you're going to, rock the main stage?
And again, in Denmark, sadly not, because it's trying to... So that's the thing. With moving here, we've had absolutely no contacts here. So we don't really know anybody. So trying to crack also then into the music scene, it's very difficult because we just don't know anybody.
Yeah, that's a full-time job in itself.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's everything's been going like super well in other areas, and so like then to try and dedicate time to that has been harder. So it's I've had festivals come up and everywhere that's just not in Denmark, and actually for the moment that's been totally cool. That satisfies the live playing side of it for me, and I've been working like it's been on the album or it's been on other things, and so it just hasn't been it's weird to say it hasn't been a priority, because playing live should be a big experience thing, but I either sit here and stream, or basically I just sit here and kind of get my shit together basically in this room rather than on a stage in front of people. So it's something I need to get better with and get in more, but just at the moment, it's just not been a priority.
Well, I see you're going to the LA Ukulele Festival. That's not a past one
indeed.
That came up, is it? Is it just current?
No. Yeah. That's exactly it. Yes, I planned this year as I thought it would be a quieter year, and then LA comes up, so that was amazing. Yeah, I've never been to America before, so that was yeah. So that was like a crazy opportunity. So I was like, oh my god, yes. And again, like the names are there. Aldrine is playing. Bernadette will be there. Boris will be there. My good friend Victoria Kalansky will be there. So these are all like faces that I know from all social media and stuff like that, but I've never met. So I'm very excited for that, and just also excited to say hello, America, and hopefully not be deported from that. So that'd be good.
You have any plans to keep coming out this way? Make it all the way to Hawaii?
Yeah, I mean, I would really love to. So it's because it's essentially the homeland, right? So that's it's the place to be. No, I'd love to, and there's so many ridiculous. I mean, the ukulele community is already nice, but one of my big fears was when I started playing on Instagram, and why I tried to stay away from it, was the Hawaiian players, right? And it's because if I'm coming in and I'm going, hello, this is a ukulele, and I'm playing like I do, I'm like, these boys are going to rip me a new one. So I was very much expecting that. And it's been literally couldn't have been like more opposite. You know what I mean? They were championing me from like when I was unknown. And that just, I don't think in any other instrument is heard of. You know what I mean? There's no way would you come in the guitar community doing things that are technically wrong and come into that, and then like the biggest players championing you and saying, look, this unknown person is excellent, you should listen to them. I don't think it would ever happen. But in the ukulele community, they're like, yeah, baby, let's do it. So there are many people I need to hug and kiss in Hawaii, basically, yes. And so I would love to come over, and if the stars align, maybe it can happen from LA. But I've also got another festival that's in September, and it might end up as the weekend after. So I have to leave it with the universe, basically, and see what happens. So, but I'm playing to the universe and Craig Chi. So those are the people I'm praying to.
Nice. Sammy sent over an MP3 of his album for me to add into the podcast here and there. The album's called Vejr, I think is how you say it. It's a Danish word that means weather. And each of the songs explores kind of a different weather feeling and vibe. This one's called Fog. So you say playing wrong. What do you think of as your style or your approach or the things that like you want to express on the instrument that maybe other people think is weird or wrong? To me, it's intriguing. What are you like trying to do with your music? And, your expression is kind of that means to get there. If you were to like explain to an alien, like, this is me, this is my music, how would you kind of capture it and describe it?
I definitely want to explain to them different kinds of biscuits instead of like that, and cookies and stuff. I definitely want to prefer that. Again, I think from background wise, I want everything to be atmospheric. That's essentially what I want to create. I want to create. Soundscapes always makes me a word that makes me go, ugh, but is that kind of word instead, right? It's not really. I'm not writing songs. That's what I don't feel like. I'm not writing like, you're not going to listen to this and go like, this next banger by 4stringboy on Radio 1. That's not going to happen. It's just essentially it's a mood. That's what I'm trying to create, and that's why I went with the weather, the kind of thing, because it creates a mood, and also because I'm from England, where the weather is consistently terrible. So that thing that you have called the sun, we rarely see that, and especially, in Denmark, you have at least 3 more days than England, but still, it's generally overcast and grey and miserable all the time, but there's a weird feeling of nostalgia and melancholy with that I associate with, and it's like I said, because I grew up and it's English, and that's how I feel, but because Denmark is like so similar in that fact, to me it makes me feel like home. And so like trying to put that into like a music, like I said, it's kind of an atmospheric thing, and I think that's it. I'm essentially trying to create like a blanket of miserable sound rather than write a song.
Interesting. Well, I loved your stuff listening to it, and it felt like it's just the kind of thing that you would put on to like, compliment the moment and just kind of be that backdrop for a lovely time, or just cruising, kind of meditative sort of thing. But that's very different from like your covers, which is a lot of what people see on the social medias and stuff, where you're like, chop, chop, chop on, good timing and those kinds of things.
Yeah. It is. It's, again, playing the social media game, right? It's kind of like I remember always reading about, I can't remember what players it were, but basically asking how they got bigger on social media and stuff like that. And they said, no matter what they did, it was just always them doing covers, like showing off their chops, that gets them the most eyes on it. And that's essentially how they made it. So for me, I basically, when writing covers, I just write stuff. I write the covers of music I like listening to. That was it straight away. And the stuff that I like listening to was either, again, alternative rock or miserable. And it's stuff that you wouldn't associate being played with on a ukulele. You know what I mean? It'd be Radiohead or it'd be Muse or something like that. And it's just not stuff. So for me, again, the puzzle aspect of trying to rip that composition apart and seeing how I can kind of make it work on a ukulele was very much similar to how you'd kind of work out and try and make it figure out on a piano. So again, it was kind of doing that. So I think I would, and again, that's the thing when it came to writing the album, it's, I kind of worry at sometimes that, there's not, I'm not putting in enough chops there, I'm not doing anything so showy off or stuff like that. If you go listen to, Jake or James Hill or stuff like that, lots of their early stuff was like chop, 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 you know what I mean? But still fantastic music. And so there's that worry in the back of my brain that I'm not making stuff like that. The stuff that I make is very much long notes, or it's, it's very much like that. So it's trying to find where I'm happy with it as a bit to it. And like I said, sometimes I think I stress. There's a track called Storm, which I think I tried to put all the chops into. So that's the opposite. And because, I envision Storm as like a stressful, horrible environment and quite dissonant. So that's it. So every now and then I think I'll release them and then go back to the more kind of chilled out vibe. Like I said, I try and always think about the music and the sound rather than how technical it is, how I'm playing.
Well, that's wonderful. That's super lacking, I think, because everybody sees the fancy stuff and they're like, oh, I got to do that. that's what I want to do. It sounds so awesome. I'm going to impress my friends and get chicks and all that stuff. That's not necessarily, that's not speaking to the potential of the music that you can possibly create. So I think that's great that you're laying back into that. What is your approach to, I guess, teaching timing? Because I'm always beating my head against the wall, trying to help people like 1, 2, 3, 4. This is basic stuff, people. But, it's something that seems like most people struggle with. And then as a player who leans into that spacious, kind of patient music, you obviously have had to master that yourself. How do you share that with your students?
Yeah. So, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. One of the hardest things to teach is rhythm, and especially in adults, because if you teach kids like naturally get rhythm really quickly. And I've always said it's because they have a lot of rhythm in their lifestyle. You know what I mean? They go to kindergarten, or they go to nursery and stuff like that. And there's lots of dancing and song and games and stuff like that. John, who's 44, doesn't go to the office and start singing and dancing because he's asked to leave. You know what I mean? That gets... we're made to feel like there's a weird side of us that you're not allowed to do, and especially in the workplace, you know what I mean? So it's a side of us that we lose, and so I think we'll lose that natural kind of rhythm about it. And it is, I've had a lot of students who really, really struggle with it, and I try and always basically, there's two sides of it that I always try and do, and basically one is straight away go to a metronome. So even though, the metronomes can scare the bejesus out of obviously the best players, for beginner players, sometimes I think the problem with rhythm is that it's just basically, to them, it's a space and they've got no idea. They have no context of what's going on, right? They just know they have to put these notes in this space somewhere, and they just go here, there, and here. And when you're like, no, and they're like, okay, I'm going to go here, and you're not. So I think with those kind of people, right, the metronome for me is much more kind of linear almost. So, and I'm not talking about, a standard old school metronome only really clicks on the quarter beat, right? Duh. And it's really important to feel that quarter beat. But the great thing about digital metronomes is that obviously we can increase the subdivision count. So, for example, if we're playing eighth notes, you can make the click count, so it's eighth notes. So I try and make it so whatever the smallest subdivision is, whatever they have to count, the metronome is basically providing all the context 24/7 for that.
Oh, really?
Because if like I said, if you give them any space, that's where they die. Okay, so it's any space is no good. So if they can kind of go, okay, 1 and then they know they have to go 2 and 3 and then come in the 4. Slowly, obviously, that works out robotically, but we'll know how muscle memory works. The more we repeat that, it then comes in and gets easier, right? And it's the same with, especially when if you get to 16th notes or anything ridiculous like that, it's the same. I will break the click down to 16th note count. And I kind of associate it with, and like I said, with the adults, it goes down well. With the kids, they're like, I don't know what this guy is talking about, but I associate it with at the end of the first Matrix film, when Neo then can see the Matrix, right? And that's how I associate subdivisions with when you have it in the metronome. It's because you're showing the student that, mate, this note doesn't just exist free flowing in a time; it is stuck somewhere. And if you can see basically all the possibilities of where it should be, it's much harder to miss it, right? So it's kind of, I try and get that feeling in it. And again, sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. It really depends on the student, right? But yeah, it's a very tricky one, basically. It's and like I said, with a lot of students, I either try and get them so, they're either tapping their foot or they're nodding their head or something like that. It's just basically you try and get them to feel it as much as possible. And it's, as you said yourself, it's not an easy thing. What do you do to try and crack through to them?
Well, I mean, I'm big on taking away the expectation and just like do something. I think it goes back to like if you're a professional, a career professional, you're a lawyer, you're a teacher, you're any of those things where, in your office, you're probably not singing to yourself. You're not dancing your way to the restroom every day. That's not part of your routine. So you gotta, I try and make people as comfortable as possible and unstick them from that, so they can
That's
kind
nice,
of like,
man.
like, I don't care. This is not, you're just not at Carnegie Hall. It's just a class. We're trying to increase your enjoyment. So just open up and go nuts. But short of that, I do work with the metronome. I don't really have any kind of like specific method that I work through, but I do try and, especially with strumming, I try and get people to understand like, okay, here's the grid. And if it was a slinky and all the lines were equal, you would stretch it out and it all moves relative to the rest of it. It's always the same ratio between spaces. Yeah. And then I make them count in spaces. If they're holding, I feel like anytime anybody's actually playing, they do okay. And then when they stop, it all collapses because they're afraid and they have no idea.
No, exactly. It's the fear of I'm not playing. Oh, why aren't you playing? Oh my God, why aren't you playing? I better play something right now. So that's it. Yeah, man. I mean, and that's a beautiful thing. So I'm so glad that you said that, and it's so awesome that you do that as well. Part of being a teacher is just making the person comfortable. You know what I mean? I've heard such horror stories from adults of like music teachers that they've had as kids, and it's just like, and again at university, we had a lecturer who basically just made you feel like ass all the time, like would purposely want to catch you out and stuff like that. He had a game that we all used to play as a class, and this was weird. It was a class of bass players basically. And our job was basically he'd bring up his DAW, zoom it in as close as possible, hit record, and be like, you have to play on like 18 BPM and hit the quarters. And then he'd show you, obviously zoomed in because you can see on the DAW how far out you were, and laugh at you. Doesn't teach you anything. You know what I mean? Doesn't teach you anything apart from, inspiring the arson and how to find this person's address and torch his house down. But you know what I mean? It doesn't inspire anything good in you. That's absolutely it. Even if, a lot of it is going that, especially with music, you know what I mean? It's like, it's fine to make mistakes. You're right. So much of education is based on that mistakes are bad, mistakes are bad, mistakes are bad. And in music, or Bob Ross, you've got to make mistakes. It's the only way that you can push through and do it. And often you'll make mistakes and be like, oh, that's absolutely perfect. And that's it. I try and tell, all my students at least, there's no such thing as a perfect take. I don't think it exists ever. You know what I mean? Compared to if you analysed everything, I don't think there's such thing. Maybe there is somewhere, or maybe I'm just covering up for my own mistakes. But, I feel like there's not. It's how you react to it and how bounce off it. That is much more important than, oh, that was a 16th note out. Oh, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter in the long run. It's how you react to it and then can cover it up. I've done some terrible things in gigs. You know what I mean? Absolutely awful things that then the crowd have gone, wow, that was the best you've ever played. I've been like, what's going on here? What the hell has happened? And people just don't care. So it's, being comfortable with it and embracing your mistakes is, a big thing.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. Can we close with you sharing about, well, two things. I got to know about the big pick. It looks like a big pick and it has a rubber band on it. No, it's a half a thumb pick.
So, okay. So do you want me to do the very quick version of this?
Whatever you feel like.
Oh, cool. Okay. So basically, my body is stupid and I suffer from lots of skin problems. So my thumb in particular has a problem where basically it seems to be when, and it only occurred like at a certain time in the ukulele. That was a good, thank you. Where just trying to put me off. Where basically if I was strumming, my thumb would get really agitated. And so like the skin would instantly like blister and then just start like disappearing.
Wow.
So it was like a complete open blister. And like I could not touch the string and especially strum. It was impossible to do it. And, you know, I tried a couple of things. I tried like strumming with my nail because obviously it's a legit technique. But the way I play the sound I want, it's just not the tone that I want. I don't want that tone. I want a soft, really soft sound. And so my thumb did that. So I'd experimented with felt picks quite a few times and played with them like as a guitarist or whatever on the ukulele. And this was, again, when I first bought a ukulele, I bought some picks just to play around with it and stuff. And I started strumming with it. I was like, this sounds very similar to like the same tone that I'm getting with my thumb. So I was like, that's excellent. So I was like, okay, maybe I can get away and let my thumb repair by like strumming some songs and stuff like that. Because I primarily play fingerstyle, I lasted 2 days before getting really annoyed. I was like, I can't do anything that I can usually do. So I was like, there's got to be a way around this, and researched. I was like, felt thumb picks must exist. They don't. So basically it was a good week of me buying guitar thumb picks and destroying them in order to find some way of attaching a felt thumb pick to it.
Wow.
And that was basically it. And generally, and it was lots and lots of different things. And in the end, I found like the one that worked. And I was like, this works. This felt pick sticks to my thumb and it doesn't move and everything like that. And that's it. That's basically how it's always been. And that's always how it's been. And it's only because I get asked the question about my thumb pick 3-4 times a day. Like every time people are like, straight away, yeah, that's cool. What is that? And everyone's like, where can I buy one? And it's like, you can't. I was like, it's just a horrible Frankenstein thing that I made. But luckily, I've worked with a company in Copenhagen who have basically made me my perfect thumb pick. So they've basically made a much better redefined version of what I turned the pick into, and then created, because I bought loads of different felt picks, and played around with like what tone, because felt picks are insane. If you buy like plastic picks as a guitar, they come in different thickness, but they generally all sound the same. Felt picks, they so range from nothing, and they just like, this is a normal felt pick, and you play it and you're like, well, this sounds like I'm rubbing it with like a sheep or something like that. It sounds awful. And so I found like 3 different ones that I liked, and so I gave these felt picks to this Danish company. I was like, can you make me like one that's like a kind of like these, like a combination? And they did. And wow. that's now that's the pick I use with the combination of this. But I mean, the good news is that basically they've put it into production. So So hopefully in a couple of months, we're just finalizing on it. It'll be available to buy, because everybody asks me 24/7, and like I want to be able to, you know, give these people a felt pick, because for me, I adore it, and especially for the harmonics, I think it gives me the tone that it does, that I get from the harmonics. So in order, if people want to play around with that, then I want them to be able to do that and see if they prefer it.
Cool. Well, I'll definitely be buying myself one so I can play around with it and see, because I always kind of wrote felt picks off. I didn't realize that's what you had going on there. That's a cool kind of invention.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And again, it's just from absolute sheer stupidity and necessity, right? There was no way that I wasn't not going to play ukulele. That's essentially what it was. That's all it came down to. And so I had to butcher something together in order to kind of create something so I could continue playing ukulele. I never imagined it to be like a forever thing. It was basically until my thumb healed. And then I got used to it because, it sticks out more than your thumb and you have to get used to the depth perception versus different. And I got so used to it and so used to the sound that actually I didn't want to then just use my thumb anymore. So, and that's it. And so now, like I said, it's just, I use it 24/7.
Super cool. Very, very good. Second thing, anything you're excited about? What is coming up? What would you like to share with the world?
I'm very excited about this year. So in July, I'm playing I never remember the name of it. I call it the Great British Bake Off because that's all I remember. The Ukulele Festival of Great Britain. So I'm playing that, and there's some ridiculous amount of names on there. So to be part of that bill, I am extremely happy, really, really happy. So I have that going on in July, and then September there's the LA Uke Fest, and there's also, like I said, it's not said when it is in September, but I'm the main guest at Dutch Uke Day. So who knew the Netherlands is absolutely the king of ukulele fans? All the ukulele fans in the world moved to Netherlands at some point and lived there and had families. And that's essentially, they're all there. So they're the main things I'm excited about. I'll be releasing a new book in next month that's essentially low G and baritone continuation of my fingerstyle first day exercises. So it's 12 like mini pieces essentially that are written for low G and baritone. So I'm very excited to get that out.
Super. And what's the best place that people can find you?
My website, 4stringboy.com. That's probably the easiest. But if you have no idea what I sound like or what I do, then just go listen to me on YouTube, and you can listen to my album there, or just watch me play covers, or listen to me talk about harmonics.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sammy.
Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
Once again, that's Sammy Turton, 4string boy. You can find him at #4string boy on Instagram, Facebook, I expect TikTok too. Or you can go to 4stringboy.com. Or if you want to check out like the Patreon side of things, he does that as well. Patreon.com/4stringboy. All with a number 4, not spelled out. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope to catch you in the next podcast, which is published every first and third Saturday here on the Live Ukulele podcast. Once more, my name is Brad Bordessa. I hope you can join me on the 27th of this month, April 2024, for my basic movable chord shapes systems Zoom workshop. Would love to see your face there. Please be in touch. I'll catch you next time. Mahalo once again to 4string boy. Go check him out. Send him some love. And I'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, keep on jamming. Hui ho.